For matriculants, exams have already begun and others are soon to follow. Whether you're in grade 5 or grade 12, you still have to prepare for final examination. Studying for final exams can be painful and stressful, but if you don't study, you're setting yourself up for failure. Here are some useful tips that will help you out, and Dr. Ken Resnick, an educational psychologist, is here to explain. Good morning, Dr. Ken, and thank you for joining me.
Good morning, pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Right, Dr. Ken, final exams are around the corner for most, not just matriculants. So, when should the exam preparations begin?
In actual fact, if you don't mind me saying, excuse my little frog in my throat, they
Mm-hmm.
need to plan reasonably 2 weeks ahead. And what they need to do is work out a timetable so that it doesn't become stressful at the end. So, for instance, a month before, they should just, for instance, do 2 subjects a day. What I need to help clarify is that they need to know how to study. In other words, you shouldn't study more than 1 hour. And when I say 1 hour, okay, the brain can only absorb efficiently for about 40 minutes. So it should be 40 minutes of study and a 10-minute little break and then 10-minute revision. And then have a little break and then they do a different subject. So the whole idea is that you don't want to always, today I'm just only going to do geography, tomorrow only history. There's a way that the memory works, but I can't go into detail now. But if they do it and they spread out in making sure that never the exams they've covered virtually every subject. A subject like maths, you've got to practice. So they need to put away a half an hour at least every day just practicing maths. Because it's a subject that if you don't practice and you're not that good at it, you are going to panic and get yourself in a bit of a state. So it's very important that they plan, not leave it to the last minute. Also, what they also need to do, a subject like history, instead of starting at A, right at the beginning, and then grinding your way through, they must look at the subheading. Look at the section. For instance, the start of the causes of World War II. It's subheading. They need to take that section, take out the subheading so that they can understand what the whole section is about. And then
Mm-hmm.
see how the dots connect with each subsection so that they can get a picture of that particular section. And don't try and study for 2 hours at a trot. They need quite a lot of breaks. If you're doing merit exam, they can maybe do 3 subjects in the afternoon. For instance, they come home from school, do an hour, have a half an hour break, do another hour, chill out, rest, have supper, and maybe do half an hour maths after that. The weekends, they can throw in a few more subjects, but the idea is that they don't sit ending up doing at one subject over 2 or 3 days and then go on to another subject. They need to plan, as I said, so that they're covering all the subjects, chill out, give themselves lots of time to rest. Some kids find studying early in the morning is more helpful. But whenever the time is that they study best, they need to know how to study efficiently, and that's very important.
Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Ken, you mentioned that students shouldn't study for long periods of time, like 2 hours or more than that. Now, you'll find parents who are always on their kids' case, like, why aren't you studying? And even though they'll tell them, but I've studied for 2 hours, how much longer can I cram into my brain? What advice can you give to parents?
But first of all, it shouldn't be the parents' problem if they matric. Kids should really be
Mhm.
responsible enough to know how to study. Obviously, the younger they are, the better it is. But sitting 2 hours in a room doesn't mean they're studying for 2 hours. They call it
Yes.
dancing around the desk. They're up and they're moving things, and if they're doing 10 minutes of real study, it's a lot. So that idea where parents think that they put the kid in the room, the kid studying, is a bit of a fallacy. You
Mm-hmm.
need to study where the child, first of all, needs to understand that it's their problem. They should be doing the work because they want to, because they have to, rather than have a parent on their case. And of course, if they don't have that self-discipline, which so many kids don't have, it becomes a problem. So they really battle to sit and study, say, for even 40 minutes. In that case, they can maybe break it down into 15-minute little slots. Have a break, but as long as that study time is effective, but there's no question to sit for 2 hours is fooling nobody, and your brain is far too tired by then, and you're not absorbing anything like you should. And also, if it's a lot of reading material and you haven't organized or learned how to study by looking for keywords, as I explained earlier on, how to sort of take out a whole section by looking at subheadings, etc., it's going to be a long, arduous process. So what you should maybe be covering in or understanding in only a half an hour of efficient studying of history, you could take 3 hours, not efficiently, and not even absorbing half as much as you would have had you studied more efficiently or had a good technique in half an hour. So it's really, the productivity and what are the children getting out of it. But sitting in a room for 2 hours is definitely no guarantee. And the parents, they might send them to their room, but the parents, especially of matriculants, need to understand this should be the matric's responsibility, and they can only give that much help. But the matriculant must ask for the help if they need it.
Mm-hmm. And how does the surroundings or learning environment affect the way students study?
Very much. If you've got a noisy house, let's say kids in matric, and their siblings are running around screaming, the radio on, TV on, well, that's definitely not conducive to study. And I know that some students maybe are, in the less affluent places, sometimes there are 2 or 3 kids in the room. Well, they've got to make sure there's a place for them to study. You can't study with noise and distractions all the time. And you've got to focus on a specific thing, especially if you don't have the self-discipline where the slightest distraction gets you away from your study. So there's no question that they should be at a desk. They shouldn't be lying on the floor or lying on their bed. The door should be shut. There should be minimal noise. And they must, as I said, not just pretend that they're doing work, but they have to do it efficiently and have the breaks in between. Because there's no question, if they don't have breaks, their brain is going to just freeze up, But the actual atmosphere is very, very important. And parents, especially with matrics and grade 11, have to ensure that they're giving their kids the best facilities possible, even though the situation might not be easy. But they need to find the time to allow their kids to have a quiet place.
Mm-hmm. All right. And what are some psychological fears that can hinder the performance of the student?
There's no question that is a problem. And I've just dealt with a kid now. Often you've got parents that are pushing kids too hard, okay? Let's say a subject like math. Now, if a kid with a subject like math, I've just done a child now, does not have the confidence, he's not that much of a fool. But there's no question math generates a lot of anxiety. So what happens, he looks at the first math sum, all of a sudden starts panicking, makes a mistake. It could affect his whole exam. So at the end of the day, but his mom was always on his case. He was sent for extra lessons, you name it. He had no say in his maths, in terms of nobody on his case. So the important thing is to try and ensure that the kid takes responsibility, that the kid understands it's a problem, and there is a way forward. But if they're working for their parents, in other words, if they don't get 70% because their parents are going to be angry, well, it's extra pressure in that exam. And it could easily exacerbate a bout of anxiety and obviously affect the exam results. So what I say to parents, ask your child what they think they're going to get. Let the child fit the target. Obviously, they can't set a failing mark. But then, and they got to understand, but remember, if you don't get to that target, can we agree that on the weekends you're not going to play PlayStation, as an example? In other words, negotiate with your kids. What goals are they going to set for themselves, rather than us telling them what we want? Because it's their exam at the end of the day.
Now, Dr. Ken, you mentioned that with subjects like mathematics, it requires practice, and obviously it's not advisable to start practicing for math a week or 2 before the exam. So when is it or the best time to start mathematics?
Every day of the year. If the kids sit down every night and do half an hour of math, just straight off the supper at a certain time, they will find things a lot easier, because it's just concepts that if they've missed out in the earlier grades, it becomes more and more difficult, and the children eventually hate the subject. But if they can just discipline themselves to take each section, whether it's, let's say, adding or multiplying, doing 20 problems of word sums in an hour or half an hour a day, or 10 problems, they get used to the idea and it'll build up their confidence, because maths is very much a confidence subject as well. They've got to believe in themselves and they've got to want to take the challenge. But unfortunately, a lot of kids opt out. The moment it looks so difficult, more, I can't do this. More, come help me, and they haven't even tried. That is why if you can instill that self-discipline early on, and where they do half an hour of maths every day, in the school week from the beginning of the year, they really should be well prepared come exam time later on.
And during the exam, how can one calm their mind and focus? Because sometimes we receive the exam, we've been confident, we studied, and all of a sudden, start panicking and the anxiety builds up and we just lose concentration.
Yeah, there's so many things. As I said, sleep is quite important. Making sure they know their work so they can build up their confidence is obviously important. If they've only spotted certain questions, it might generate anxiety. But by the time they're teenagers and they get very anxious for the exams, very difficult, you might be able to take a calm med or something to calm you down, whatever it is. But the parents don't want to add to that anxiety by getting anxious themselves. So it's just something that the child has to be just given techniques so that they know when they go to the exam, they're well prepared and they're feeling confident. Anxiety relates a lot to their self-belief that they can do the exam, and they're confident of it. You'll find those kids don't get quite as anxious as the child that is really well prepared.
Okay, Doctor, a message to all those writing exams. Any final thoughts, any final words of advice?
Be prepared. That old scout thing, be prepared. Don't leave it to the last minute. Be disciplined. Minimize. Give up TV for a while. Give up your PlayStations for a while. Prioritize the time you should study. It doesn't have to be for hours. Just get somebody to help you set out an exam timetable correctly that is doable, rather than a flight of fantasy. And your parents need to calm down as well and ask the kid if the child needs any help, rather than tell the child. And allow the child to take more responsibility, to understand it's in their hands.
Right. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Ken, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Yeah, pleasure. And thanks for inviting me again. Bye.
Dr. Ken Resnick, an educational psychologist, giving us tips on how to prepare for a final exam. How can students prepare for the final exams? I mean, the matriculants have started with their exams, and the other grades are soon to follow. Simple tips that go a long way, and one of them being planning. Plan ahead. You must have a plan, because, as they say, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. Develop the ability to manage your time. Time management is so important, and it should also form part of your plan. Structure your study periods accordingly, which also goes back to time management and having a plan. Break down your large tasks into more manageable ones. Set achievable goals and objectives. Persevere even under difficult circumstances. Establish ways to monitor and measure your learning progress. Sleep. Get enough sleep for your brain to take in all the information, and also rest breaks. Take in small rest breaks in between. That's like 10 to 15 minutes before you get back to your studying. And the morning of the exam, try to relax, try to calm yourself down. If you need to take something to calm your nerves, do that. Do some exercises, some brain exercises, perhaps play a game of Sudoku, or do a crossword puzzle, take your dog for a walk, do some exercise, take a jog or walk, or whatever it is. And don't forget to get in your healthy food as well. Stay hydrated. Grab your bowl of cereal, eat before your exam as well, because you don't want to be stressing about hunger while you're trying to find the answers. And for subjects like mathematics, do make sure that you start planning ahead, way ahead before the exams. Like if you know that you are not really good at math, start practicing for it the moment you get into the class the first term. If you need a tutor, go ahead and get yourself a tutor, and you build up on that, from the first term to the second to the third until the final exam of the year, and you will produce excellent results. But once again, if you fail to plan, you are planning to fail. So those are just some tips on how to prepare for exams and to become successful in your final examination. So good luck to all those who are writing exams, to the class of 2021 matriculants. Good luck to you, and to all those who are soon to follow, grades 11 and below. It is 11:33. You are listening to the Mid-Morning Talk on Salam Media. Please stay with us. We will be right back.
Looking to get your kick? Kiki's have now reopened on 235 Mat